Okay, continuing on to the Renaissance, and I gotta watch my time here because of the time I gave on the plan. Anyways, the Renaissance refers to rebirths. Okay, so within the European society, there was a lot of rebirths, both on the cultural side, the artistic side, political, and economic. And so it's kind of interesting. In our society now, it's very different. Like we're maybe not so connected to the culture and the art aspect of how we view ourselves as a society. And maybe we are, but maybe that connection and what is being put out there isn't of the best quality, right? So for example, the music you listen to, what is the content of that music? What are they actually talking about? You know, the shows that you watch, what message are they giving? Or the movies that you watch. Okay, the political atmosphere as well, and the economic. So I had some grade 9s in the class earlier asking me how I feel about house pricing. I don't really know what they were trying to get at, but the conversation we had, and one that I had with some other teachers the other day, is that it's very tough right now. If you're trying to buy a house, it's very expensive, right? So that's part of the economic side. And so it almost seems like there's a bit of a disintegration of society, of our connection to the different aspects of society. And that might be because there's too much of an emphasis on the self. We're too I. We're not as much we. Right? We don't necessarily think of all the things. Yes?
Can we close the window over there because of the light? Reflecting it?
Totally, we can definitely do that. Does that help?
You know what, just try all windows. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
You're all windows.
Keep filling out the notes. Is that better?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. Is that better for everyone?
This is the best.
I made this PowerPoint on my computer, and it wasn't obvious to me that the bolded white words are actually not easy to see on the board. Okay. Anyways, one of the kind of political, social ideas and artistic ideas to an extent as well that begins to emerge is called humanism. This is going to be important, okay? Keep this in mind. So humanism is the idea that man was the center of his own universe. Right? Like you're in control of your own life. That you're the focus of your life. Or dare I say you're the main character of your life, okay? Not someone else. So that fuels this idea that we should embrace human achievements. You know, like an incredible human achievement. You know, we put people onto the moon. We left our planet. As far as we're aware, in human history, no other civilization has done that before. Okay? Usain Bolt ran the 100 meters in like 9.82 seconds. It's insane. There's a gentleman who sprinted a marathon, which is how many miles? Does anyone know? 42 miles? Mm-hmm. Sprinted a marathon in under 2 hours. That's absolutely bananas. You know, that's human achievement. Albert Einstein theoretically proved things correct that they couldn't prove right or wrong technologically for another 50 years. Yes?
Was it Bolt that did that?
No. Usain Bolt's a sprinter.
Oh.
Right. I don't think he can run a marathon.
It's like slow twitch.
I think he can.
Slow twitch.
Maybe, right? Anyways, humanism emphasizes the dignity of man, the dignity of humans. That each of us is dignified. That we're worthy of respect and individualism, to be seen and to be recognized as a person. Okay. And they're trying to break from this religious orthodoxy. And I'll just be upfront with you, I don't recall exactly where the research for that came from, so you can check out those links. And it's interesting how these ideas come back to play, 400, 500 years later as well, which we don't talk about right now. Anyways, they're shifting the dialogue from these scholar clerics, right? Which scholar just means someone who's educated, more or less. Clerics refers to religious people. So in the Renaissance, the people who were educated were the ones who were religious. The people who could read and write are the ones who were priests or involved with the church, particularly in European society. I don't know how much in other societies. And eventually they're shifting over to secular scholars. These are people without religious affiliations. That's what the word secular means, right? So they're not dogmatic, particularly, actually I won't get into that. Okay. One of the greatest inventions and revolutions of all time, the printing press.
Oh yeah.
I mean, how many of you actually read 10 minutes every day? I do some days, right? Some of us do. Most of us don't. And we really take for granted the idea that there's just information available to you at all times. And now we're so lucky you can get it in video form. Matter of fact, you can find it at Mr. Kawaja's YouTube channel, video form. Okay? But at this time, in the 14th to 17th century, people just didn't have access to books. They didn't have access to new knowledge. So it was actually very hard to accumulate knowledge, to learn and grow. But with the invention of the printing press, now you can take your ideas, you can pay someone to print, 100 copies and distribute those ideas to people who can read. More people are learning how to read and write, more people are getting educated. Now, particularly how that relates to religion is that more people are actually reading the Bible instead of just hearing, what was being told to them from their priests. And particularly in the Islamic world right now, in my country, in Pakistan, which has the highest rate of illiteracy, there's a lot of strange beliefs and strange behaviors, religiously speaking, in Pakistan, because none of these people can read or write. So rather than actually reading the Quran and learning it for themselves, they're just told what the religion looks like from someone else, right? So, there's a dramatic difference between being told what to think and actually thinking for yourself. That shift is what's happening here. A couple people we want to go over. There's notes there. We'll focus on Thomas Hobbes and John Milton for the course. Okay. Although I will mention this little saying by René Descartes. I think, therefore I am. So there's this big shift in development in the idea of the self. And they're asking the question, what makes a human? Which is a very relevant question when it comes to particularly the issue of slavery. What is a person? Or the issue of women's rights as well, historically speaking. What is a person? Who is a part of society? And who gets to decide that? And what separates us, more important question, what separates us from animals? Do we have more value than a cow as a human? Some of us think, yeah. Why is that?
Because they don't have to work or go to school. We're self-aware.
We're self-aware. I don't know how going to work and having to go to school makes us more valuable than a cow. I'd love to just lay around in the sun and eat grass.
No, I think cows are more valuable because they don't.
Oh, you think cows are more valuable than humans? Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Oh, okay. Then a horse is more valuable than a cow. Okay. But over here, you said that we're self-aware.
Yeah.
What are we self-aware of?
Just being alive, I guess. I don't know.
Being alive, and what's the opposite of living?
Death.
Death, right?
We know death.
Actually, a little bit of faith permeation because we had discussion about that. If you pay attention very closely to the story of Adam and Eve, after they eat from the tree, they become self-conscious. They become aware of themselves. Because the first thing they do after they eat from the trees, they put clothes on. They notice that they're naked. And Jonathan Pajot's work, what he discusses is that this putting on clothes is adding layers. And the layers are there to put a barrier between us and death. Right, so that's kind of that self-awareness, self-consciousness that makes us different from other animals necessarily. Right? It's not that we're just trying to survive. We're also trying to actively avoid death and build a barrier between us and it. Right? By having food, resources, protection, whatever it is. Okay. Also, a little challenge to you because you mentioned that. This is for you, Ms. Rantucci. You mentioned there's one faith permeation item in this room, but there's actually two others, if you can find them. There are a couple things here. So Thomas Hobbes, again, he's very much a collectivist. He wants people to give up their freedoms and their self-interest in order to be safe and to be ruled over by an absolute sovereign. So something like a king who's going to make decisions for them and who's going to seek to protect them. Which is also very classical liberal oriented, right? Your government, whoever's in charge, is only protecting your rights, making sure we don't get invaded, but they're not necessarily actively interfering with your life. Okay. John Milton, on the other hand, he defends the idea of free speech. He says the liberty to know, to utter, which means to speak, and to argue freely according to conscience. Okay, so there's this idea that you should be able to say whatever's on your mind. You should be able to think freely and speak freely. Now, at the time, maybe you couldn't speak freely against the king because that person has all the power, and if you speak poorly about them, off with your head. Which, from a archetypical standpoint, a little bit of symbolism, the idea that the king has a jester in his court is there because the jester is the opposite to the king. He's the one person who's allowed to make fun of the king and to criticize the king freely. And so, this is more psychology stuff, but if a system is running well, particularly now, we see jesters as comedians. They should be able to speak freely about issues in society. If the government is running well, the king is running his country well, he should be okay with a particular individual being able to make fun of him. If you silence that person, it says a lot about the way the leadership is going. So, for example, we could look at a basketball team. Hopefully the two of you felt free to tell me, hey, Mr. Kaladja, we want to do a different drill. We want practice to look a different way. And to be able to have that conversation means that the system is running in a healthy manner, right? But that's all founded upon this idea that you should be able to speak freely. And speak your mind, okay? There's also this idea by John Milton that no one is chosen by God to lead, which counters how kings and emperors founded their authority to lead. Particularly Roman emperors were very good at this. Julius Caesar, I don't know if you know who that is, hopefully you do. If you don't, that's unfortunate. Julius Caesar, once he did gain power, and his successor, which his name is escaping me right now, one of the first things they do is they rewrite their history and they create a lineage between them, a couple ancestors, and some sort of god. So their situation would be Greek god. Hitler did this as well to an extent. He said that the Aryan race came from God, and they're special. They're God's chosen people. So people rewrite this authority and say that we're chosen to lead by God. Right? You can utilize that particular reasoning to, justify genociding millions of people, but we don't need to talk about that. We'll talk about that more when we talk about Nazis and communists later on in this unit. Okay. We'll make another video, and I don't have a lot